We wish to acknowledge the Aboriginal people as the traditional owners of this land, and we pay our respects to elders past and present. Warning: this podcast contains sexually explicit material and is a safe space for all individuals to freely express themselves. Any information or advice provided comes from our own experiences and in no means should be taken as professional advice. We respect each individual and have zero tolerance for any rude or unsolicited behaviour.
Hi, I'm Luna Wilde, and this is Project S.L.U.T with Wild Times, your podcast for everything BDSM and Kink. Hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Wild Times. I hope everyone has had a great week. I know I've had a great week. It's been busy, but it's been good. Life is lifing right now. So moving on, what are we going to talk about today? I'm going to talk about safety and consent, because safety and consent exists in every interaction you have, not just BDSM and kink, which is what I'm going to focus on today. But the reason why I wanted to deep dive into this is because it carries on from episode 2 of the Project S.L.U.T podcast, where we talked about consent again. And that's just because it's such an important thing to know about, because like I just said, it actually affects everything in your life. It's not just to do with sex. It can be interactions with people, it can be physical touch, it can be not wanting to go out when your friends are like, hey, let's go out on the weekend, and you're like, no, and they're like, yeah, but we'll just go out for a little bit. It's like they've just completely disregarded your lack of consent to going out right there. So I want to talk about the 3 S's and the 3 C's. If you listen to the second episode of season 3 of Project S.L.U.T, you'd know what I'm talking about. But the 3 S's are safe, seen, and supported, and the 3 C's are consent, comfort, and communication. And they apply to every aspect of life and a safe life, because in BDSM and kink there is going to be some physical pain. There might even be psychological pain, but what we are not here to do is create damage, lasting physical or psychological damage. Yes, some people love having the marks from impact play, for example, but those heal. I'm talking about actual nerve damage when we're talking about physical, and psychological trauma when I'm talking about the psychological side of it. That's not what we're here for. We are not here for that. That is not fun. That is just actual trauma. And BDSM and kink is actually a great way to heal trauma, physical trauma and psychological trauma, sexual trauma even. So by using the 3 S's and the 3 C's, you can have really beautiful, safe, supportive interactions or scenes with the people that you're playing with, basically. So safe, seen, and supported is talking about making sure that, one, you feel safe in that situation with that person, that you actually trust the person that you are playing with, whether you're in the submissive role and you're trusting the dominant, or you're in the dominant role trusting the submissive. And what that basically means is, as a submissive, you trust that the dominant is not going to push your boundaries, is actually going to listen to your safe words, and is actually going to take your safety into consideration even while inflicting physical pain, whether it be through restraint or impact play, ball crushing, suffocation, being stepped on, those kinds of things that actually cause physical pain, but they're still taking into consideration your physical limits of pain. And with the dominant side, you're trusting that your submissive is going to listen to you and is going to use their safe words. When I'm in a session with my subs, I make sure that they use their safe words. Before we even start the session, I ask them, what are your safe words? And if they turn around to me and say, I don't have any, I literally tell them, make some now. You need to know what they are, because I need to know what they are, because I'm not here to actually cause lasting damage. I'm not here to fuck up your body in a way that just makes you feel like absolute shit afterwards, and you're like, that was the worst. I've had a session recently with a sub that was really into impact play, and so I could see at one point that what I was doing was pushing him to the point of his boundaries of physical pain. And I just remember grabbing his hair and staring at him and being like, do you want to use your safe words now? And he was like, yes, mistress, and used his safe words. And so I was like, good. It's not a bad thing to voice your boundaries. You're not a shit sub because you can't handle what's happening. We all have different levels of physical and mental resilience to pain. So some people can handle more than others, and I'm not going to be able to know because, believe it or not, I'm not actually a mind reader. I can read body language really well, which is why I knew that this particular sub was nearing his point of physical pain tolerance. But some people aren't like that. And so you need to actually be able to feel safe to voice your boundaries, to voice those safe words. I've had subs come to me and say, oh, I never really felt comfortable using my safe words before we started having our sessions because previous doms would say that I was pathetic or stupid or a little bitch for using my safe words. That in itself is heartbreaking for me because that's a perfect example of someone not being safe and not actually being consensual in what they are doing and how they are dominating their subs. The amount of times that I have seen doms on Twitter just being like, I don't care what my subs' boundaries are, I push them, I force them to do all these things. That's all well and good to say if you're just shit talking, but if that's actually what you're doing during your sessions, that is downright wrong, in my opinion, because everyone has boundaries. Everyone should be consenting to what is happening here. I have some subs that we have actually talked about the fact that they want their boundaries pushed, but it's something that we talk about. It's something that we've actually decided beforehand to be like, okay, this is what we're going to do. This is your current boundary. This is how far I'm going to push it, and we'll see how you go from there. Because it can just cause so much psychological trauma, especially in these situations where you have subs that want to impress you. They want to be a good boy or a good girl, and they want to make their dominant happy. But the dominant also needs to make sure that they're making their submissive happy, and they're not just utterly annihilating them and their self-worth and their confidence, because after a session, both parties should feel empowered and fulfilled. Not one party feeling empowered and fulfilled and the other one just feeling like, oh, I'm actually not worth anything. I'm not even a human being. That's not it. That's not the vibe that we're going for. So safety is about the person's physical safety, about not pushing their physical pain tolerance to a point where they actually can't handle it, because comfort is important even if you're doing something that is uncomfortable, because you could easily cause dislocations. You can cause broken bones if you're not careful. You can cause lasting nerve damage. So it's like knowing your shit, basically. You really need to know your own body, and you need to know the body of your submissive, coming from a dominant point of view, because this is where I operate from. So it's like, for the submissive, you need to know your body's limitations. Can you be put in these positions? Can you be part of these practices? Do you have any physical limitations? Do you have a lasting injury? Do you have lack of mobility in a certain area? Do you have scar tissue that might affect how your body reacts to this? Like, do you have the flexibility to do these things that your dominant may be wanting to do, or that you may be wanting to do? And then as a dominant, you need to know the techniques. You need to know your shit. And I cannot stress this enough. You need to know the techniques the correct places to tie someone, the correct places to hit someone, how to actually crush someone's balls without actually physically destroying someone's genitalia. Like, how do you know how to do it? And the reason I get so passionate about this is because in recent years there's been this huge, I don't even know how to call it, like this huge increase of doms, especially online, just being like, oh, I saw dom Twitter and now I'm a dom. No, that's not how this works. You need to actually know your shit, because one, not only are subs going to know that you're not for real because you don't actually know this shit, or you're going to get subs that don't know themselves and they don't know their boundaries, and that's just going to be a whole shit show. But you're also going to damage people in a way that is not fun and not consensual when you take the BDSM and the kink side of it away. Like, if you were just doing that to a person and they hadn't been like, please actually do this to me, it would be assault. So that's not what we're here for. So that's safety, basically, in a nutshell. And so being seen, moving on to the next part of our 3 S's, you want to feel seen. You want to know that you're actually being cared for, even while you're being dominated, or even while you're being submissive, or even while you're being dominant. Everyone in that situation should feel seen, should feel like the other person understands and recognizes and respects their boundaries, their consent, what they actually want to happen, what each party is trying to get from this scene or from play. Is there something that someone is trying to express or work through, or they just need to unwind from a difficult week? Like, what is happening around the play that is directing the play? What outside context, what outside factors are coming into it? So being seen during BDSM and kink play is very important for everyone, and it's a conversation that you can have quite easily. It just requires each party talking to each other about what they're hoping to get from the scene, what they want, why they want it, and how they want it to happen, basically. And that brings us to our last S, which is supportive. And basically that is just making sure that everyone in the situation feels exactly that. They feel supported. No one is getting kink shamed or fetish shamed for what they want to do. Everyone feels like their boundaries have been understood and their boundaries are going to be respected. And this is not just relaying to scenes or sessions that are just one-off. It also comes into play in actual DS relationships that occur in romantic relationships where people just take on a particular role all the time when it comes to sex. Everyone needs to feel loved and supported and cared for. Like, each party actually has the other's best interest in mind, and no one's being selfish and just trying to get themselves off. It actually relates to everyone, and it's really easy to make sure that people feel supported. You just ask them questions, you just communicate, which we're going to get to soon. You just communicate, you just talk to them and be like, is there something that you liked? Is there something that you didn't like? Would you like to do more of this, less of that? Is there something else that you have been keen to try? Making sure that if you're doing serious things like trampling, bondage, impact play, things like that, that you're actually asking questions during the scene, during the play. Is this okay? Does that feel alright? How are your arms? How are your legs? Whatever it is, actually ask the questions, and everyone will feel safe, seen, and supported. So that now leads us into the 3 C's, which are communication, consent, and comfort. So first up is communication, because it is the most important thing. We communicate with each other constantly. Not even in a sexual sense, but just in day to day. You have verbal language, you have body language. And so communicating with each other is how we interact. And it's paramount for safe BDSM play. And communicating is literally just asking each other questions, telling each other what you want, what you don't want, what you like, what you don't like, what your boundaries are, what you're okay with, what you're not okay with, anything that you want to try. It's also important to encourage people to communicate, because, like I said before, sometimes people don't feel comfortable communicating. They have a fear of conflict, whether real or imagined, and so that can really play into the level of communication that is going on. Sorry, my throat's a bit croaky today. Too many vapes. But with communication, you get to learn more about each other. You get to understand the person that you're dealing with, what they want and why they're there. And it can just teach you so much about each other. And it means that you're going to have really smooth interactions. Because if you don't communicate beforehand what you want a particular BDSM interaction to pertain to, while you're in it, while you're in that scene, it's going to get awkward at some time. Because if you're the dominant, for example, and you're sitting there like, oh fuck, I don't really know what my submissive wants, then you're either going to do something they don't want, or you're not going to do something that they want. Does that make sense? Because you don't know, you don't have a roadmap to this person, and that's what communication is. It's literally two or more people giving each other a roadmap to sexual satisfaction, basically. And it's as simple as just having a conversation beforehand and getting to know the other person. And that leads us into consent. So you can't have consent without communication, and that's why I put them in this particular order. It's because communication comes first, and consent comes from communication. Actually understanding what everyone consents to, what they are okay with. And I want to point out once again that consent can be given or revoked at any point in time. It's like that Consent by T video that came out, I think it was something like 7 years ago. And we talked about that in episode 2. But you can give consent whenever you want. You can also take it away whenever you want. If something's happening that you're like, I don't actually like this, I thought I would like it, but I don't, you can take that consent away. And if you're having a safe experience, the person that you are taking consent away from, quote unquote, is going to be okay with that. They're not going to shame you. They're not going to make you feel like shit. If someone does that to you, stop interacting with that person. If they get upset, if they make you feel like shit for revoking consent in a situation, that person possibly doesn't actually care. You can have the conversation, you can communicate with them and be like, hey, when I took consent away and you said all these things, it made me feel really shit and I shouldn't be shamed for revoking consent. You can have that conversation. If that person is actually willing to take responsibility and they're like, oh shit, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to do that, then maybe interact with that person again. But me, I love cutting people off. I'm like, see you, bye. You get one chance and one chance only, and you blew it, so see you later. Because in today's age especially, I feel like people should know these things, but then again, people also don't know these things, and that's why I'm talking about it now. So give someone a second chance if you want. Maybe if it's in a relationship kind of setting, like romantic relationship, it's your partner or partners, plural, and you revoke consent in a certain situation, they get kind of upset about it because they take it a bit personally, even though it has nothing to do with them. Talk about it, explain how you feel. If they come to the table and they respect how you feel and they respect that they acted in a way that wasn't actually a positive interaction, then you can grow from that, you can learn from that, and hopefully in the future, if and when you revoke consent, they accept it and understand it and support you through that. But if they don't come to the table, I would highly recommend not dealing with that person again, or maybe just not dealing with that person in that particular sense. Because consent, being respected, gives you confidence, it improves your self-worth. Being able to voice your boundaries, to stand by them, to have them respected, it not only builds confidence in yourself but in the person that you're dealing with. You have confidence in yourself because you've been like, this is my boundary. I understand myself and my body and my mind well enough to know that this is where my line is. And that other person comes back to you and is like, okay, there's your line in the sand, I won't cross it. Confidence, consent, everyone is happy. No one is in a grey area of like, can I do this, can I not do this, am I gonna upset someone by doing something? Everyone's communicated clearly, everyone consents to what is happening, and no one's boundaries are being taken for granted. Because sometimes people can cross boundaries by sheer ignorance. They just didn't know that that was a boundary of yours, especially if you haven't communicated it beforehand. So consent is really important, not just in sex, but in day-to-day life. And we talked about this in episode 2, about how consent can come into play with friendships, family relationships, social relationships, work relationships, and sexual relationships. Being able to inform consent in a sexual relationship where you are, in my opinion, the most vulnerable, that will give you confidence to inform consent with every other relationship you have. Having a boundary that is a sexual boundary that you have voiced, that has been heard, that has been respected, will help you be able to voice your boundaries in your day-to-day life with everyone around you. Consent is just paramount, and it exists everywhere all the time. It's even that person that just stands too close to you in the shopping center or something, like when you're queuing and that person just stands right behind you, like that's gonna make the queue go any faster. The amount of times that I've been like, excuse me, you're standing too close to me, could you just take a step back? That's me not consenting to them being in my personal space. So consent is really important, and it can only be understood with clear communication. So once you've communicated clearly, once everyone consents to what is going on, then you have comfort. And that's literally just everyone feeling at ease with what is going on, with what is happening. It's not necessarily being physically comfortable, because especially with BDSM and kink, there is a level of discomfort, that pain and pleasure that blend together. But everyone's at ease with what's going on. No one feels on edge. No one feels like, oh, I don't really want to be here. I don't really want to be doing this. Or I'm going to let someone down if I don't do a particular thing. No one feels like they're going to be shamed. None of that. None of that exists. Everyone is just super comfy, enjoying what is happening, because that's what we do this for enjoyment. Everyone's just wanting to have a good time, wanting to have some fun. It's not super intense, serious, traumatizing shit that we're trying to do. It's fun. It's all for fun. Everyone's just trying to get off. We're all horny over here. We know that. So being comfortable is about feeling like you can trust the person that you're with, that you feel supported by the person that you're with. So being comfortable is basically like the top tier. So if I was to put all of this into one of those pyramid graphs, you have safety and communication at the bottom. Those are your foundations. Then above that, you have seen and consent. And at the very top, you have support and comfort. Because support and comfort cannot come without feeling seen and giving consent, which cannot come without feeling safe and having communication. They all blend into each other and they all lead into each other, and you can't have one without the other. That's why I operate from this standpoint. That's why I use these, not just in my professional domination, but in my life. Are the people around me making me feel safe? Am I able to communicate clearly and openly with the people around me? Do the people around me make me feel seen? Do they take my consent into consideration? Do I feel supported by the people around me? Do they make me feel comfortable? It's something that I use in my personal sexual life. It's something that I use in my friendships, my family relationships, my work relationships, my professional dom sessions, like everything. This encompasses everything. So if you take one thing away from today, that would be it. Would be take these 6 things and take them into your everyday life, but especially take them into any sexual interaction that you have, whether it's BDSM and kink related or not, because then you will have more beautiful interactions. You're less likely to have interactions that leave you feeling like absolute shit afterwards. And you'll also have this sense of self-worth and self-respect that comes from operating in this way, because people can't overstep your boundaries if you voice them. And if they do overstep them anyway, then you know that's not someone you want to be associating with, and you cut them out. Cut them off. Bye. We don't have time for that. So I hope that everyone enjoyed this episode. Maybe you learned something new. Maybe you just had a refresher on what all of this is. Let me know. Send me a DM if you enjoyed this episode. Also, I'll be doing a poll on Instagram. You can follow my Instagram. It's Luna__Wilde. And I'm going to be doing a poll this week on episodes that you guys want to hear about. So if there's something in particular that you want to hear about, let me know. Send me a message. Answer the poll. Just let me know. Let me know what you all are interested in, because I want to know so that I can make these episodes for you, because I love doing this. It's a lot of fun. I always learn something new, or I just reimagine an idea or a concept that I had beforehand, and it's a lot of fun. Anyway, stay safe, stay sexy. I love you guys, and I will see you again next week. Bye.